This is an exciting one. Heard about this a lot. Talked about this briefly last session. We've implemented this in the live demo, and I'll show that. But what we really want to get to here is creating, for example, like an SRE experience dashboard. So rather than going into and out of self-service and the catalog and a dashboard page, we want to bring all these things into one view. So self-service action uh, within context in a dashboard. Um, and I'll show the SRE example, but identifying an issue and then being able to go take action on it directly from that dashboard. So let's say in this public demo site, we've got the SRE. Previously, we had a few tables, pie charts, iframe dashboards. You have some alerts, but if you find something such as like network latency, server down, you might want to do something about it. Obviously, you have the option here for day two operations, but up here, now we can say, I just want to go and redeploy this image tag. So all I have to do is select the deployment, go and execute that. And again, I'm in this case, the SRE, I'm owning this dashboard and this is my experience. So we go very quickly from issue identification to action to go and remediate it. A few other use cases could be used for vulnerabilities. So if you just want to go create a pull request to remove a vulnerability, you could do that. You can create a self-service action all within a AppSec team dashboard, for example. And another use case could be like maybe you have a more complex self-service action. So let's say like scaffolding a new service, you're going to want to create a repository, database, communication method, owners, all of these different things. And if you have someone who might be newer to the team, who maybe doesn't have the full context for, and I'll go into here, scaffold new service. If they need more information and more than just hovering over here to see a little bit more, you can create a whole dashboard where you have maybe some markdown on the side that says, here's everything that you need to enter. Here's some optional things, and then really guide them through it and allow them to go execute that self-service action directly from that dashboard. So this is an exciting improvement. I've already used it a few times. And again, any questions, drop them in the chat. Infrastructure improvements. I'm hoping, if we have some customers or prospects on the call right now, that you've seen the benefits of this. Because you're scaling, we wanted to scale with you. So as our customer base expands, we're committing to enhancing ports reliability. So we've made some interesting recent infrastructure improvements. These are just designed to ensure port supports your growth seamlessly and securely. So hoping you've noticed that and appreciated that. So the portal roadmap planner, this is a really cool one. I'm going to hop into that in a second. First, I'm going to talk about it. So Portal's product, that's the way that we recommend to do this. Find the user stories that apply to the most people, solve the most pain, and provide the highest value. So one way we want to help with that is by having this roadmap planner for your portal as a product. And we recommend using this early and often to plan that. So I'm going to go over to the roadmap planner here. So we can start out, if you have an idea of a user story that you want to implement, obviously you can go ahead and enter that. We do have a few ideas here for you. So, going back to AppSec, for example, you could just add a user story. So whether it's tracking standards, self-service actions for making sure newly created assets are secured by default, bringing features to production, we've got some pre-baked things here that you could take advantage of. So we'll go and add one of these. So FinOps, scene cost per team services or namespace. Persona, I think, would be manager here. So with this, you'll be able to see that cost breakdown rather than kind of in a big sheet, specified by team, service, or namespace. And then today, you just put how that's done. This seems like it's usually spreadsheets. Continuing, then we run through a workflow of prioritizing that. So what percentage of the team is going to be using this feature? It's managers, so I'm going to say it's maybe 20%. This would be used daily though, so it's going to raise that priority. Very essential to have, especially if you have like a FinOps initiative, something to reduce cloud costs, and then how much time will be required to implement. Say maybe a day. add it to the table, and then keep adding new user stories. So this should be very helpful in planning your portal as a product by creating these user stories, actually going and implementing and launching them, and then coming back, hopefully with some user input about them, to go and bring even more features to your end users, your developers.
And it is available on our website, so you can find it reading in a port website. When we will share with you the presentation, you will have a link to it, and it's also now in the chat. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's an exciting one. Definitely use that. Cloud cost import. So one thing we've wanted to do here is focus in on one particular use case support during every community session. Today, I want to talk about cloud costs import. So OpenCost is one way to do this. We also have a partnership with KubeCost where you can bring in your cloud FinOps data, connect it to your services, the namespaces, the teams, make it more applicable and consumable to people. So I want to talk about 3 different use cases here. So simplifying cloud cost reports. So these can be kind of cumbersome. I think like AWS Cost Explorer, for example, you feed it into Athena, and it might be a lot to take in. So these reports might be great for FinOps, tracking maybe a baseline spend, but they're not really consumable by developers who ideally should be owning their own resources and their own resource cost, et cetera. So putting this in a portal is a great way to support things like cloud cost saving initiatives. So 3 user stories I want to talk about. So for the first one, simplifying how a developer can view cloud costs. So I'm going to show that in our public demo here now. But the takeaway from this should be, if I'm on a certain team, I should be able to see the cost of all of my resources all in one view without having to kind of parse through a big file. These things have already been related back to my team, my service that I own. So going into the catalog, again, this is also available. I'm going to drop this link in the chat as well. FinOps dashboard. So a few things you could do here. You could see across your different environments, production, test, dev, how much these things are costing. Obviously, we want development environments to cost the least. I'll get into more of that in a second. And then your Kubernetes cost. So bringing that data in from KubeCost or OpenCost. And then this is the view I really wanted to show. So cloud resource costs by environment and team. So if I'm on a certain team, I want to see my production costs, and I'm on this team. I'll expand this view a little bit. What I'm seeing is the resources I have out there, how much they cost, which account that's coming from, et cetera. So giving that view to developers to see, maybe I need to make some configuration changes, but I own these resources, so I should also own the cost. And then a little bit further down, seeing it by cluster as well. So I think Kubernetes developers may not be that experienced with Kubernetes, and especially when it comes to Kubernetes costs, they might not have much insight into what this really means for them. So giving developers from one of these tools you've invested in cost information about how they might optimize the configuration of their cluster to cost a little bit less could be good. Another way to see it could be investing, right? So if I have a certain namespace that is overloaded and it's one of my highest revenue producing namespaces, maybe I invest in a dedicated node pool for that namespace, for example. So feel free to play around with this dashboard, go take a look at it, try to implement it in your own environment by integrating with one of your tools. All right, so the next one, so tagging resource initiative. I think, whether you're part of like the AWS Migration Acceleration Program, or you just want to add more information to your resources themselves with tags, one way you could do that in Port is by evaluating which resources have which tags and creating an initiative that says all these things must be tagged by a certain time. Otherwise, we're going to, maybe shut them down. That might be, a little bit. It might throw the developers into action there, but or maybe just bulk add a whole bunch of tags. But going into my, give me a second to pull that up. So my environment here. So we'll go to a resource ownership initiative. So this is based on a scorecard, and the scorecard just says, this rule that we're focusing on, make sure all of our S3 buckets at least have an owner tag on them. And so we could see the ones in the top right here that have not passed this condition. You can give a little bit more information. Our costs are growing 12% month over month. We'd really like to track these down and make sure that we know who owns the buckets, and if there are any stale or orphan buckets out there, that we can shut them down. So you can throw some consequences, a timeline in there, whatever you'd like to include. See this by team, see where you're not passing the rules, and then you could just go and add an owner tag to the property itself and make sure that it passes. So you could say owner is Aiden, and then that's going to disappear from this dashboard. So great way to go and enforce resource tagging initiatives to stay on top of FinOps initiatives. The final use case I want to talk about is adding a time to live for resources or things like development environments to ensure you don't have any orphan resources out there. So one way you could do this is by adding a time to live in a self-service action. Let's say, for example, you want to create a development environment. You need a little bit of time to go and deploy the code you've been working on in that environment. So you could set that for a certain amount of time. You could add an approval process in there that says, if this is going to cost a certain amount or if it's going to exceed a certain time frame, get some approval in there. But the idea here is we don't want these developer environments going and eating up a lot of our budget. We would like to have them up for a certain period of time for a certain reason and then shut them down afterwards. So there's one way you can implement that, adding a TTL into the self-service action. I think one way we could go about that is in self-service. So creating a developer environment and adding that time to live here. And again, some logic in the back end that says if this exceeds 10 days, get some approval. You could even do some cost estimation with things like cube cost to say if it's going to cost more than a certain amount, get some approval. So good ways to have controls over your resources and resource consumption. So next month in our community session, we got a couple things we're going to want to cover. JQ Playground when mapping data sources. This is a very requested item that we're excited to release soon. The benefit here is when you're mapping your data sources, you currently may not have as much information as you need from that API response to be able to map to the right properties. So what you'll be able to have soon is a JQ Playground within Port that says, here's the API response, and then you're able to go play with it and find the right things that you need and have that kind of feedback loop of that JQ query you're entering. The next thing would be data model view improvements. So being able to hide or search blueprints, another very highly requested item. Right now, when you go into the data model, you have to search around maybe with a word search on the page or zoom in, zoom out, find the right thing. We're going to improve that experience very soon by being able to hide and search those blueprints. Table performance improvements kind of goes along with the infrastructure I talked about, but being able to populate those tables very quickly. And then discussions on entities, I've got a quick mock-up of that. Very cool. I think the idea here is you want to have all the discussion around certain entities, whether that's repositories, vulnerabilities, resources, all in one place. So we have some customers who maybe pull that information into ServiceNow, and developers have to have that conversation there, or maybe Jira. And the idea here is on the far right side, you can have a comments section on it. So you can pass ownership of, let's say, a vulnerability, for example. If a vulnerability has been identified, you want to request some mitigation for it, you can start a conversation. So you can tag the AppSec team and say, hey, I think this might be a false positive. Let's have a conversation about this. And you can have that back and forth all within Port. So we're really excited about this feature.
Yeah, and feel free to tell us what do you think about it, and if you have any feedback.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and be sure, you know, if there's anything you've seen or you're not seeing yet, go upvote it on the port roadmap and check out our release notes.
And time for Q&A. So we already have a question, Aidan. The question is regarding cost. So you mentioned KubeCost integration for cost. What other integration do we have?
Yeah, so we have KubeCost, we have OpenCost, we've got AWS Cost Explorer that you can integrate with. So that's what we have. If you use a different cloud cost tool, you can always ingest that information via the API or webhook. Or if you'd like to, you can create your own Ocean integration to ingest that data directly into port.
And people are getting excited about the capability to hide and search for blueprints in the builder, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Guys, if you have any questions for Aidan regarding what we've been presenting or regarding the roadmap or the planner, feel free. We'll wait a second or two to let you ask your questions. And yes, the discussion is something that we are very, very excited about. So in addition to have the little panel with the discussion, you will be able to tag people, and they will receive an email notification every time that there is a discussion on one of their entities. And also in the future, you will be able to add discussions as widget in dashboards. So it's going to be a very, very nice feature. So we are very, very excited about it, and we think it's gonna really improve the developer experience there. Okay, so it seems that everything is pretty clear. We will share with you the presentation and the recording that started 3 or 5 minutes into the discussion. Thank you very much for being with us, and see you next month. Thank you, Aidan.
Thanks, everyone.